Hello and welcome back to the East Carolina Law Group Self-Help Series. This is the next segment in our family law series, and this segment is entitled Support and Property Distribution. So as it relates to family law, one of the pendant claims or other claims that can come in a divorce or family law case is equitable distribution, alimony and post-separation support, and child support. So we're going to go at these things in this order: alimony and post-separation support, child support, then equitable distribution. For alimony and post-separation support, we're going to deal with these two things separately, but together. And the reason is because the standards are the same, but there's some factors that are very similar. So, as it relates to post-separation support is support offered to a dependent spouse pending the dissolution of the marriage and prior to the judgment of alimony that a court may put in place. To get either alimony or post-separation support, you have to show, the moving party has to show, that the moving party is a spouse that is substantially dependent on the other for maintenance and support, and that it is equitable that the court make an order of support to that spouse. Now, why is that important? Well, here's why. Many times we find cases where one spouse is claiming alimony against the other because they want to do so to punish the other party. But a lot of times we discover that either the spouses have not been honest in reporting their income, or one spouse is working under the table and thinks that they can pull a fast one, or that one spouse is just basically saying to heck with the other. Any of those cases are bad. But for the spouses that like to try to hide their income, which we have quite a few, for example, ones that don't report cash income, ones that work under the table, particularly where we are in the Outer Banks area, folks that like to clean houses and then don't report the income. These are not things that we can't find. As a matter of fact, we've gotten pretty darn good at finding this income. So, getting a court to determine whether one spouse is dependent and one spouse is supporting is based on numbers. Now, whether it's equitable for the court to order and how much the court to order and for who to pay is dependent upon the facts of the case. There are factors that go into the equity, such as the duration of the marriage, marital misconduct allegations. In particular, as opposed to post-separation support, where claims of adultery are not necessarily an absolute bar to obtaining post-separation support, as to alimony, if the spouse seeking support commits adultery, that spouse is barred from getting any. On the other hand, if the supporting spouse is determined to have committed adultery, they are going to pay, but the amount is the only thing that's in question. So it's important to remember that if you are in North Carolina, we still very much support the sanctity of marriage, and adultery is highly frowned upon. Regardless of the fact that popular society tells you that it's absolutely okay to fornicate with whomever it is you so choose, as a matter of law, there are ramifications and repercussions for doing so. So remember, before you go out to do that sort of thing, how much is it going to cost you, and is it worth it? Now, as to alimony post-separation support, as we said, the standard to apply is which spouse is supporting, which one is substantially dependent, and what's equitable. It's a numbers game by and large. Now, many times we also find situations where one spouse may be a dependent spouse and the other may be supporting, but the supporting spouse is carrying the entire debt load for the entire marriage. And in that situation, that's where it falls to equity. You may have the numbers to support dependency or support, but you may not have an equitable situation. And that's where these claims tend to fail. The next type of a claim that we'll talk about is child support. And how is child support determined? North Carolina is particularly unique in that we still retain a civil child support system, meaning not based on a child support enforcement agency or anything like that. It can be done through a civil court proceeding. We also have child support enforcement. and many times it will get kicked over to child support enforcement for various reasons. But by and large, North Carolina follows a set of guidelines that are developed under UIFSA and Section IVD of the Social Security Act. And so the way those guidelines operate is based on the income of the parties. Child support is very difficult to get around those guidelines, so it's important that you contact an attorney very early in the process. Lastly, we'll talk about equitable distribution. Equitable distribution is a remedy that's available to married persons only. Now, this message particularly goes out to those who are living in a palimony situation. Palimony is where you are living with another person but not married. In other words, you and your girlfriend are living together and you're buying property and things like that. You're acting like you're married, but you're not. North Carolina has no common law marriage. So you're in a palimony situation. But if you're not married, you don't have a legal remedy available to you to divide property. You are actually placing yourself in a legally detrimental position by shacking up with another person and not getting married. Now, important to remember is this. In terms of a married couple who splits up and has to go through an equitable distribution, the process to the court is simple. 1, classify the property. Every piece of property within the marriage has to be classified, and any piece of property not in the marriage has to be classified. It's classified as either marital, separate, or divisible. Separate property is property acquired prior to the date of marriage or after the date of separation. Now, after the date of separation, property could become divisible, such as real estate purchased prior to divorce but during separation can become divisible, meaning that there could be a marital component. This gets into more advanced analysis. However, be advised that if you are separated and you then decide, well, we're separated, I can go buy myself a new house, that's a bad idea. Don't do it. Property prior to the date of marriage never becomes marital in North Carolina. Other states have what's called the doctrine of transmutation, which basically says that if you bring separate property into a marriage, it becomes marital, and that's not the case. However, you can create marital property if you take a piece of property and you deed it. For example, any property purchased prior to a marriage, say deeded to one person as sole tenancy, and then subsequently deeded as tenants by the entireties to a husband and a wife, that property can become marital. But there's an analysis that goes into that as well. It could simply be divisible with a marital component. Any property acquired during the course of a marriage, titled to both parties, is marital property. Any property acquired during the course of marriage but not deeded to both parties is presumed marital property. And any property acquired prior to the date of marriage or after the date of separation or divorce is separate or divisible. But it's a fact-intense analysis. The important thing to remember is the second step of the process is valuation. How is the property to be valued? And that's a matter for trial. Lastly, how is the property to be distributed? The law presumes that an equal distribution, 50-50, is equitable. But there are certain circumstances where the court can determine that 50-50 is not equitable. And there's more specific factors that go into that, such as misconduct, spoliation, waste, abuse, and that kind of thing. And we're not going to really get into that in any great depth. But on that note, I'll leave you with this. If you separate, the important thing to remember is do not sell, dispose of, waste, throw away, alter, or do anything with any property within the household. Anything that could be subject to distribution. Do not take out credit cards and try to run up debt. Do not try to clean out bank accounts. In an equitable distribution case, as a matter of strategy, the first thing I normally will file is an injunction, and I'll get a court order that will prevent disappearance, waste, spoliation of any of the marital property or anything subject to equitable distribution. And there will be a court order in place, and stiff sanctions are applied if that court order is violated. For example, as previously spoken about as to local rules, in District 2, violation of a court order, Rule 65 court order preventing that waste or abuse, or a violation of a discovery misconduct, meaning you're not providing information as it relates to that equitable distribution, results in a steep distribution in favor of the non-offending party. There are penalties to be applied. You could be jailed, don't do it. If you're involved in an equitable distribution, if you're separating from your spouse, do not think because they've left or because you've left that you can do something you can't. Stop, don't do it. It could be very bad on the backside. So as to distribution, there could also be an interim distribution, meaning you could have a temporary hearing which distributes property, and generally this is where I'm going to ask for an injunction to be put in place to prevent waste and abuse. So keep that in mind. If you are staying shacked up, however you want to call it, in a palimony situation with a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever your case may be, you are actually placing yourself at a legal disadvantage. It's better to get married because at the very least it would preserve that remedy. Thank you for tuning into the East Carolina Law Group, where your family is our priority. You can find us on the web at www.eastcarolinalaw.com. You can find us on our Facebook page at the East Carolina Law Group. You can also call us at 252-453-2273. And if you want to find more videos and keep updated on when we put some more of these kind of things up for some more self-help kind of information, you can do so by subscribing to our YouTube channel by clicking on the link right about here. It's there. Down. Yes, right there. Subscribe by clicking our link. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this informative and have a great day.